We have lots to discuss here in today's video, including some offseason speculation around a few teams, including the Vancouver Canucks, the Pittsburgh Penguins, the Calgary Flames as well. Plus, according to the4thperiod.com, there is some complications between the Maple Leafs and Matthew Knies' camp on a contract extension. We'll discuss where they see things differently and how could it be resolved, and could it lead to another solution besides him signing with the Maple Leafs. Plus, we have a news on the NHL waiver wire. We have another signing today, including another prospect, a big injury update on Jason Robertson, and some other results around the NHL, including a few NHL trophies that are basically awarded now that the regular season is done. All that and more coming up next. Welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to discuss here in today's video. First, before we get into the offseason speculation, we'll have a few other quick items here to go over here. First up, we do have news from the NHL waiver wire. The Calgary Flames have Dryden Hunt on waivers. He's obviously most likely not getting picked up. Obviously, he couldn't be on a playoff roster, and the rest of the league that's not in the playoffs is not playing right now. So it doesn't really make sense, and I believe his contract's expiring as well. But Dryden Hunt basically is sent down through waivers to help the AHL franchise in their playoff hunt here. So the Calgary Flames actually had 4 players make their NHL debuts in the last game of the season, including top prospect Zane Parekh, who got his first NHL goal. They also one of their other prospects and a prospect from the Los Angeles Kings all get their first goal in the same game, which is a rarity. It's not common you see 2 players, let alone 3, get their NHL first goals all at the same time. It's kind of a unique scenario there. In Game 82, as the Calgary Flames defeated the Los Angeles Kings in a makeup game on the road. Of course, that game was a made-up contest from the Wildfires in LA earlier this season, when a game between the two teams had to be postponed. Of course, like I said, we have a couple of signings here as well. One for a prospect and one for a veteran. The Nashville Predators today have re-signed veteran defenseman Andreas Englund to a 1-year deal at league minimum $775,000. Not a big deal overall, low risk 1-year deal. However, my only question around this isn't so much about Englund specifically. It's just with a team like Nashville, we saw them make big moves last offseason. They were by many regarded as the offseason winners, spending tons of cash on some top prize free agents, including Brady Shea on the back end, Steven Stamkos, Jonathan Marchessault up front. This team just looked like they were poised to take a big step forward, adding lots of veteran help who have a proven track record of being very successful. Well, that did anything but. This team had a major step back this year, finishing, bottom 3 or 4 in the league. So you would think with that kind of bombing of a season, if you will, that there would be significant changes coming based on how this roster did not work very well this year. And now by signing Andreas Englund, they have their entire decor locked up for next year. So where's the change going to come? I mean, I'm just a little bit surprised. Like I said, Englund getting a 1-year deal at league minimum, is it a big deal? No. Did he do an okay enough job? He started the year in Los Angeles, ended up in Nashville at the end of it. Not a big deal. I'm just surprised that the Predators have made such an effort to re-sign so many players. And with what they have to work with, you would just think they'd be ready for more change, especially, on the back end too, because obviously they had a lot of trouble keeping the puck out of their net this past year. With signing in San Jose with one of their prospects, and that's Leo Salin Wallenius, who gets a 3-year entry-level contract. He's a 19-year-old Swedish player who was selected in last year's draft in the second round. Now, as I mentioned, a major blow to the playoff expectations here for the Dallas Stars. Of course, in Game 82, in a meaningless game, Dallas Stars forward and star player Jason Robertson was injured after playing against the Nashville Predators in a game that they get beaten quite badly. Dallas has not played well down the stretch. They lost their 6 or 7 games in a row leading into the playoffs, which isn't super alarming. We've seen other teams, have that break and then get back on track for the playoffs. Like Edmonton's done that, but it's still a lot of concerning patterns. And then you take a player like Robertson, who gets hurt. He was seen leaving the arena after the game in a knee brace, and reporters were saying he looked to be in a fair bit of discomfort and pain. And now the update from head coach Peter DeBoer is that he's out week to week. Obviously, playoffs start here, and technically they start tomorrow. And if he's out week to week, they said he definitely won't be available for Game 1. It won't be able to start the series. But I mean, week to week generally means that it's going to be at least a week before he can be reevaluated and considered an option. Sometimes it's 2 to 3 weeks. It's quite often what those updates lead to be. Now, it is the playoffs, of course, and we know players will play through more than they often will otherwise. But even missing 1 week could mean significant period of time. They're playing basically every other day. So you're looking at 3 to 4 games. The series could be, heavily tilted or even over if it goes one way, one-sidedly, right? So that's a big loss. They're already without Miro Heiskanen, and now you take Jason Robertson out of it for maybe the whole series, at the very least, 3, 4, or 5 games. Like, that is significant. So it really goes to show how different teams had different strategies down the stretch and how they handled their load management, the rest versus, rest and recovery versus playing in meaningless games. Some teams opted to do the rest early and then put players back in towards the end to have like a tune-up, make sure their timing was good and be ready that way. And other teams just chose to wait until the last game or two and then to basically sit all their most important players out. Like, look at what Carolina did. They go on the road to end their season against the Canadiens and the Senators, and they had like 7 regulars not play each game, and they went 11-7, and essentially Brent Burns, they didn't want to take him out of the lineup because of his Ironman streak. So I think he did it against Montreal as well, but I know in the Ottawa game for sure, I've noticed it more. He only played 1 shift, and it was just so that his Ironman streak would count. So they dressed 7 defensemen. He took a shift early on and sat on the bench the rest of the game. So they were really with more like 8 regulars that were out of the lineup, and now they're going into the playoffs feeling pretty good and healthy. Now, of course, not everybody can sit. You can only bring up so many players. Obviously, your cap situation and all that does play a role in what you can and cannot do, but it just goes to show that there's different strategies out there, and I'm sure head coach Peter DeBoer might be having second thoughts or regrets on why Robertson was even in the lineup, right? But, like I said, you can't sit everybody. Especially the younger guys. You think they can handle it better? It's usually more of the veteran players, but it just, you don't know. Look at Carolina. They sat Aho, they sat Jarvis. Those guys are still pretty young, so difference in opinion for sure and how things can be handled, no doubt. And the Colorado Avalanche head coach Jared Bednar has confirmed that Captain Gabriel Landeskog is indeed an option to be in the lineup. Of course, we know he went down to the AHL. He was down there for at least 2, I think maybe 3 days, played 2 games, had a couple good practices, and he's back and everything went well. So he's looking pretty good. Now, of course, he hasn't played a game in a really long time besides those ones, so I'm sure he might not be quite as effective as, in the playoffs as he might be otherwise, especially with the intensity and everything ramped up the way it would be. But he's indeed an option. Now, it doesn't mean he's going to play for sure. It doesn't mean he's going to play in every game either. I've seen some reporters suggesting that where they're starting on the road, maybe they wait and he plays in games 3 and 4 at home. I don't know what the plan is, but I do think that they're very, very high odds that we're definitely going to see him in the playoffs and in the first round series against the Dallas Stars. Just a matter of how much we see him. Now, of course, with the regular season finishing up last night, we have a couple more awards that have been determined since they're based on stats. We already knew that the Winnipeg Jets and Connor Hellebuyck had secured the Jennings Trophy for best goals against average since the Jets were done playing already before that. But Leon Draisaitl has officially won the Rocket Richard Trophy for most goals with 52. And Nikita Kucherov, of course, wins the Art Ross. Nathan McKinnon probably could have caught Kucherov, but he sat out the final 2 games with the Avalanche being rested up for the playoffs. So Kucherov definitely had a phenomenal year, and for the second straight year will take home that trophy. The Maple Leafs today have recalled Ryan Reaves, who's been down with the Toronto Marlies for the last number of weeks here as well. Obviously, practicing, playing a bit, and certainly getting into staying on the ice as much as possible. Now, I don't know if this recall is going to put him into the lineup or not. Obviously, he'll be with the team. We know that much. If you take a look at how the Leafs have played recently, they've played really well. They've got a strong record finishing out the season, not only in the last, a couple of weeks, but really the last couple of months overall. They've been one of the stronger teams in the NHL and haven't really had a period of time where they haven't had any extended losing streaks, right? Like, maybe a couple games here and there, but, they never had anything that really festered into like a 5 or 6 game skid or anything of that nature. So based on what we've seen down the stretch, you would have thought that we would have saw glimpses of what their lineup probably is going to look like. And you never really thought, really, at least I hadn't, about Reaves really being an option. Now, I understand that he's, can be intimidating. He's obviously can fight. But I do think and strongly believe that he can be a bit of a liability out there as well. I don't think he can really play like he used to be able to. There was a point in Reaves' career where he could take a regular shift and he didn't really make put the team at risk, you could say, from a defensive standpoint. But, outside of being that utility guy where you want him out there for a few shifts to throw a hit or two and maybe have a fight, like that's really all you want him for now at the stage where he's at. So, yeah, Ottawa is a gritty team. They've got Brady Tkachuk, Ridley Gregg, Nick Cousins, guys that the Leafs are going to want to try to contain. And if you're Ottawa, especially where you're starting on the road, you're going to want to go into their building and probably try to get under their skin and throw lots of big hits and be gritty and, that just kind of rat style of game that these types of players do. That's how they get you off your game, is by getting under your skin. And some of the Sens players are very, very good at that. So I don't know if they're bringing up Reaves as a counteraction to that or what, but we will see. Be curious to see how Reaves is utilized or not in the playoffs. Of course, another big piece of news we got as well out of Montreal. Veteran defenseman David Savard has confirmed to reporters that once the season's over and their playoff run comes to an end, that he will be retiring from the NHL. He was a top trade candidate that we heard a lot about throughout the course of the NHL season. At this point, now that Montreal's qualified for the playoffs, I'm sure they're happy that they made the decision not to trade him. Obviously, there was a lot of talk early on, especially in the first half of the year when Montreal was a lot lower in the standings and had a lot more struggles going on, that, Savard could probably bring them a pretty good return. We didn't know his future plans, not that that really even needs to play a role in how they decide to handle things that way. Clearly, he could have gone on a playoff run with them or somebody else had they made it, right? So, but there was talk that there wasn't a ton of veteran defensemen that play a defensive style block shots like available on the market, and that they could probably get a pretty good haul for Savard. I'm not sure if they explored it or how closely they looked into it, but the belief is that he let the team and management know probably in the last few weeks that this was going to be it for him. So I'm sure he's happy he didn't get traded, and I'm sure now that they're in the playoffs, like I said, he can be continue to mentor the young D-core, and we'll see. But I know he's had a pretty solid career. Played mostly with the Columbus Blue Jackets. Obviously had a run with the Lightning where he got traded at the end of his Blue Jackets contract to go to Tampa at the trade deadline, get to win a Stanley Cup. And then he signed as a UFA in Montreal, and that contract is now coming to a close. I thought he might keep playing, wasn't sure, but he's made the decision that this is it when it comes to his career. Now, as I mentioned, on a variety of offseason speculation here, let's start with the Toronto Maple Leafs. The fourthperiod.com and David Pagnotta is reporting that there is a bit of he called it, I guess, maybe like a difference of opinion or maybe a rift, but I'm not sure. Rift sounds like a strong word, and I don't think it's really that serious yet, but there is some differences of opinion, definitely fair to call it that, in the contract negotiations on an extension for Matthew Knies. Now, Knies has had a phenomenal breakthrough season. Last year I thought was a bit of a breakthrough, but he took his game to another level here yet again, and is certainly in line for a significant raise in pay, and we'll have a lot of different options when it comes to his next contract. I think the Maple Leafs are thrilled with his development. He's become a pretty consistent top 6 player, plays well with Matthews and Marner and those guys, so certainly they have every intention of wanting to sign him and keep him in the mix. We've heard from a variety of reporters that Matthew Knies very well could be a prime target for an offer sheet. We do expect there to be more offer sheet activity over the next couple of years, including this summer, after what we saw last year in St. Louis with Dylan Holloway and Phil Broberg. Not only the fact that they were successfully brought into the Blues organization via the offer sheet route, but they've had phenomenal seasons. And it goes to show if you go about things the right way and you target the right people, it can really pay off extremely well. So, yeah, I think GMs are more likely than ever to use that tool and not worry about what other people think about retaliation, because a lot of GMs know each other. There's a lot of relationships, and not only that, but you're worried about teams retaliating against you, which was a common thing in the past when it wasn't real common to do. I mean, look at the whole beef between Montreal and Carolina there, with Don Waddell and Mark Bergevin were the GMs, and it kind of drug on there for a couple of years between Sebastian Aho and Jesperi Kotkaniemi, and well, I think everybody failed and lost in that regard. Really, didn't really work out. But this time in St. Louis, things are looking much better. Now, could Knies be that kind of target this year? Absolutely. I mean, he could be. All in, things taken into account, though, from what we've heard from the well-connected insiders, is that Matthew Knies has no desire to leave the Toronto Maple Leafs. Now, could things always change? Sure, you can never say never. And if negotiations drag on too long and things get too contentious, there could always be a change of heart on one side or another. But as of right now, we have no reason to believe that Matthew Knies will want to sign an offer sheet, because a team can approach him all they want. He has to be interested and sign it before it really gets anywhere. And if he signs it, it's expected that as long as it's remotely possible, the Leafs are going to match it. I guess there's always that possibility if it's ridiculous enough that maybe they don't. But, you would think that would be their first instinct, is to keep the player because they really, really like him and see how he fits and makes their team better. Having said all that, though, of course, right now the big gap between the two sides appears to be more so on term than dollars. I mean, obviously the dollars will change based on the term, but it seems like the team would like to get him locked up on a long-term deal, do a 7-8 year contract, keep him in the mix. As we know, the price for these guys typically only goes up. I mean, I don't think Matthew Knies has hit his ceiling yet. He's going to continue probably for at least the next couple of years to continue to get better and continue to put up bigger numbers. And it's only, like I said, if he signs shorter term and redoes his contract more quickly, then it's only going to give him a bigger contract next time around. And of course, no surprise here. This is the Auston Matthews strategy. Knies has seen Matthews do this. They are both from Arizona. They become very good friends. They train a lot together. I'm sure they talk. And this seems to be a strategy that Matthews has put to work for him to be able to make the most amount of money. It makes sense, really, from the athlete's perspective to go shorter term. There is risk involved, but if you are willing to take that risk and you can redo your contract more frequently as you continue to get better and the cap continues to go up, you're going to cash in more money. It's just that simple. And you got to look out for yourself. You are a limited time frame to make this kind of money in your life. But the team, on the other hand, would like to do the long-term deal. The player wants the short-term deal. So that is where things seem to sit right now. And we don't know what's going to happen. I mean, Matthew Knies is looking for that 3 to 5 year window. So he's probably looking for something that walks him right to free agency. That's what Auston Matthews was looking for too. And he ended up, of course, with Matthews, you get everything you want, and he did re-sign with the team. So doesn't mean you're going to lose your player, but it does mean that they want to be able to keep the maximum earning potential as high as they can and keep all the flexibility open to make a move if they become unhappy down the road. It's just that simple. So we'll see what the Maple Leafs do. But I will say that in the past, the Maple Leafs have kind of been put over a barrel and kind of given all their players everything they ever wanted. And it has been challenging to get anybody to give them any kind of a deal because of it. So, I know that they'll want to get this deal done, but somebody is going to have to cave on term in order for it to come together. So we will see what happens. Now, the Calgary Flames had a phenomenal season. If they were in the Eastern Conference, they would have made the playoffs, finishing well over 90 points, and they don't get in. Had a real solid run. I really thought they would have made it. And earlier in the year, it looked like their odds were much more favorable. Same with Vancouver. But both Canadian teams fall short. Minnesota and St. Louis beat them out just by a little bit here, right? So clearly the Flames are happy with their progress and are looking to maybe take another step next year. From what we're hearing, of course, now that these teams are done and it's starting to do their end of season media availability and of course clean up the locker rooms and let the speculation and fuel begin. The Flames' top priority this offseason is to find another top 6 centerman, preferably a right shot, younger-ish centerman in that 25 and under range. The younger, the better, depending on how established they are, of course. Probably that 21, 22, where they've had a few years of NHL experience and are ready to take that big step. Somebody they can get with some controlled term and maybe not cost them a bloody fortune, at least in terms of dollars for the short term. A name that I've seen come up in an article, which I don't know that they'd be able to pull it off, but it suggests that they maybe try to target Shane Wright in Seattle. Now, Wright finally had a breakthrough campaign and certainly picked up his production a lot this year. We know Seattle is, again, out of the playoffs, looking to probably make significant changes here. They're not going to rebuild, but they do need to retool that roster. But they don't have enough guys like Beniers and Wright in their organization yet. I just don't see a scenario where they give up on Shane Wright unless you really offer them something crazy. And I don't know that Calgary's going to want to do that. Do they have some good young players? Sure. But they're not going to want to trade them, right? So unless you're not going to offer like a Zane Parekh, that would be crazy. That's not going to happen. So, you're not going to give them something that knocks their socks off. Now, could they offer them, multiple draft picks, including a first rounder or something? Sure. But I don't know that it's going to be feasible. I think it's going to take a lot to get him out of Seattle. And I'm not sure that Seattle's going to be overly thrilled to make that move. I understand the suggestion. He's definitely the type of player that they would want to target, but I'm not sure that it's going to be feasible. But look for the Calgary Flames to make some sort of move in that regard. And in Pittsburgh, they had their end of season breakup day, locker cleanup day, what you will. Erik Karlsson, of course, had a lot to say. They talked to a lot of players here. Karlsson says, he very much has enjoyed his time with the Penguins. He's, his family's been comfortable there. He's enjoyed his time with the team, the players, but he understands it's a business and he's been through this before, knows what can happen, and he's certainly, open to whatever. So Erik Karlsson is a name that's very much been out there for a while. That's been rumored that Kyle Dubas has, I think, had buyer's remorse on and basically would love to turn around and move. Unfortunately, he still has a couple years of term on his contract, and it's still a big number, even with what the Sharks retained to send him to Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's going to have to retain a good amount of money to get another team even interested. And, for a team that's rebuilding, retooling, whatever you want to call it, you don't want to have too much money tied up in dead space like that. So, would they retain a big chunk of his money? I don't know. I mean, I'm not really sure how Dubas and company feel about that when it comes to the cap, because I don't see a team taking on a $10 million defenseman when he's not a 100-point player like he was a few years ago. I mean, his end of his time in San Jose, like I said it all year long, I said, I feel like he's playing to get traded. He played out of his mind and had a record season. But now look at what he was this year in the last couple of years. Like hasn't been, offensively speaking, he's not horrible, but he's not that, that $10 million player anymore. He's nowhere near that. So will there be teams interested and would like to have Erik Karlsson on our team? Yeah, sure there would be, but nowhere near that price. And it's going to prove difficult. I don't see anywhere, in any way, that the Penguins and the player come to a mutual agreed termination of the contract. He'd have to give up a lot of cash. And I don't see that being, why would he want to do that? So it's going to be challenging for Pittsburgh to get out of this one. But I think they've acknowledged here that, ideally, that maybe they made a mistake here. And it's not so much him personally, but like I said before, Erik Karlsson's a great player. And Dubas want to go in there and make a splash. I have no doubt about that. But he's not what they needed. That forward group is not deep enough, not good enough. And the goaltending has been so inconsistent. Although it does sound like Tristan Jarry is probably coming back for Pittsburgh. So, again, next year, you really don't know what you're going to get between the pipes. So, will Erik Karlsson be traded? We'll see, but it's going to be challenging for sure as Kyle Dubas tries to explore means to get out of this one. And Vancouver, of course, they had their breakup day as well. Rick Tocchet was quite clear on a number of things. He spoke at length to the media. And of course, we also heard from guys like Besser and Demko, who are more question marks, if you will, for their futures. I mean, Brock Besser, again, said Basically that he'll always love Vancouver and thoroughly enjoyed his time with the team. It's always going to be home for him, he said. His, current partner is from Vancouver. So I'm not sure, obviously that's going to impact their lives because, clearly if he has to move on to a new team, it's going to mean moving and whatnot. But it sounds like, as long as they stay together, that he's going to have a reason to be in Vancouver afterwards and would be interested in living there after the fact, but that's for a later time. For right now, Brock Boeser has no idea where his next contract's going to come. I think that if they can work something out, he'd be certainly open to it. But right now, it just sounds like the team has absolutely no interest in changing the offer. And obviously, he and his agent feel like they can get a lot better on the open market. There's not a ton of high-scoring players available in free agency this year. Once Mitch Marner signs a new contract, regardless if it's Toronto or somewhere else, once that contract is sorted, then you're looking at guys like Boeser and Nikolai Ehlers. Like that's the next tier of players available in free agency. So somebody's going to give them more, right? I mean, it was rumored to be a 5-year deal in the $8 million range is what Vancouver was willing to do, and that's not good enough to the Boeser camp. So we'll see. Thatcher Demko also expressed interest to stay and sign an extension, which I thought, I'm not shocked to hear him say that. I would be shocked if they do it. I mean, the injuries with this guy has been so common. It's been such a problem for him. At the same time, do you want to take the chance that, Kevin Lankinen can be the guy? I mean, but they signed a contract extension with him to the effect that they kind of expect him to be. So I really don't know when it comes to Canucks goaltending really what to expect there. But, in all honesty, I wouldn't be shocked to see a Demko trade. But based on his comments, he definitely would like to stay. But at the same time, like I said before, it's rare. You're never going to hardly ever, maybe the rare exception, you'll hear a player talk to media at the end of the season and be like, yeah, I don't want to come back. I have no interest. I'm out of here. It's rare that you're going to hear them say that. They're going to say the right things and move on and be respectful and professional. But Rick Tocchet, when he was talking, certainly asked a lot of questions around Pettersson Miller and that whole thing. Rick Tocchet basically said that, he was asked about, are you guys sure that you did everything you could? And he was kind of like, basically like, yeah, like we did everything we could, talking about what he's seen online, people saying that just take Pettersson and Miller to make him go to dinner together and fight it out. He's like, he said, trust me, we did everything we could. And he's like, I've been in more meetings than I've ever been in my life. And he said the issue with Miller and Pettersson even stems to his before he got there. And we already knew that. That's not news. Even prior head coach Bruce Boudreau and during interviews and media appearances have made it known that he had dealt with the same sort of things during his tenure as head coach there as well. But he did say, I must say, Tocchet did say some pretty interesting comments when it comes to Elias Pettersson. And it really makes you wonder if they will explore a trade or not. I mean, what does the future hold now for Elias Pettersson? Are they going to try to move him before his contract no move clause kicks in this summer in July 1? You really wonder, because he said that essentially Pettersson needs to have a better summer. He needs to work on his preparation. It needs to be better prepared to start the season. Needs to have a big summer of training. So I don't know what Pettersson's routine has been, but the team certainly would like to see him stick around Vancouver. Now, I understand that some of the Vancouver players don't love the way the facilities are set up and the training options there. And now there was also word that Quinn Hughes was going to have some other, like a handful of the guys, be spending the summer around him, training with him. Pettersson would be a great one for that. Clearly, they have a great setup there with what he does. So, I don't know. But he also said that he leans to practice better as well. Listening to some Vancouver media talk today, basically saying Elias Pettersson needs to understand that he is the guy now. Miller's gone. He's paid a gross amount of money to be the top player on that team, and he's not, being anything near it. It's like he has to be able to take on that responsibility and be the best version of himself and do all the work that goes in to what a top player has to be, And I tell you, I do wonder if they'll explore trade options, because they clearly have reservations based on these comments that he can be that. But again, it's going to be a very interesting scenario to see unfold. The Canucks will be one of the more interesting teams to watch this offseason. From what we've heard about Rick Tocchet, he didn't get into it a lot himself, just saying that, it'll sort itself out and I'll have those conversations the next little while. But there is belief that there's a good chance Rick Tocchet does return as head coach next year, and that he's likely going to be signing some sort of extension. There is a team option for him to coach the team next year under the current contract, but the belief is that everybody involved agrees that it's probably best that he sign an extension before continuing on, and that that's expected probably in the next week to 10 days or so if everything goes well. So we'll see. But Vancouver, definitely going to be one of the more interesting teams to watch this offseason. Let me know your thoughts on all of today's news and rumors in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.